Episode of This Week in Politics. My name is Vuyo Mvoko and thank you for watching.
This year is going to be a different year.
After reining in errant municipalities this week, Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana reveals provincial and national government departments are next. Is the move as unfair as the municipalities contend? And as workers suggest, could withholding much-needed billions inadvertently hurt the people and communities the move is meant to protect?
Obviously, I am very pleased with the work that is being done with the Madlanga Commission. It may well be that they need a little bit more time.
President Cyril Ramaphosa extends the Madlanga Commission's deadline during a week that saw more culprits arrested. What is this commission doing that no other commission before it did? And could the stage now be set for it to even extend beyond this year and possibly widen its terms of reference? We'll also look at how a combination of testimonies at the Madlanga Commission, court rulings and public protector reports unsettled some politicians and their parties this week. And staying with political parties, with less than 4 months remaining before the local government poll, we check in with some of them, big and small, as they show signs of beginning to take campaigning a little more seriously. All that and more in today's episode of This Week in Politics.
It is unacceptable that people can decide to spend money they don't have. It is unacceptable for people to fail to do a simple thing. When we talk about unauthorized and fruitless expenditure, we are not saying to somebody, pay money. You are saying to somebody, your accounts committee, public accounts committee of a municipality, they call it impact. It has made recommendation. All you are required to do is to call a council meeting to meet, and that council meeting must make resolution on the recommendations of that committee. And those recommendations may have, of course, consequence management, but it's for the municipality to make sure that once you do that, there's a write-off. You can easily reduce your unauthorized and fruitless expenditure.
Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana delivering some stern words on Friday, ending a week that sent shockwaves to many municipal officials and councillors. That's after Treasury announced it had withheld 13.5 billion rands of equitable share transfers to municipalities. The South African Local Government Association, which includes all of the country's 257 municipalities, is crying foul.
At SALGA, we welcome any measure that helps municipalities to become financially sustainable. We welcome any measures that improves the governance within municipalities, but we also want stakeholders such as Treasury to consider other systematic and structural challenges that contribute to some of the non-compliance. Equitable share is made up of a formula. That formula calculates how much the number of households, poor households, needs to be provided for. Those households that cannot afford water, that cannot afford electricity, that cannot afford, in general, municipal services. So what it essentially affects is that money is money that is supposed to pay for ESCOM, water boards, and other services, including salaries for that provision of those poor households. So if that money is not received in time, it will affect the late payment of those services, and that's what has also resulted. That will also result in interest being charged on the billed accounts that municipalities were supposed to pay at a certain time. So over time, it will have an impact in terms of service delivery if it's continued in this manner.
Municipal workers are also unhappy.
We were very disappointed with the action that has been taken by National Treasury to withhold the equitable share that is due to municipalities in this financial year. The situation currently in municipalities is very bad, such that if it continues more than 30 days, Treasury holding this money, it will have some serious impact in our members, including the society, the communities that are waiting for service delivery from our members in particular. So we are worried about that.
Well, Treasury says it informed all 69 affected municipalities of the decision in advance, and each one of them was allowed to persuade Treasury otherwise. There's no malice intended, the minister says.
All we want is that people must play according to the rules. I like I'm sure some of the newspapers in the Eastern Cape, they had a cartoon of me. It's the kids are playing with toys, so I'm taking the toys. I'm saying I'm taking all these toys until to play according to the rules. I like that cartoon. The kids are crying all over the place. The other one, Daily Maverick, I put a red card. Hey, it's difficult to be me. Everyone is putting all these cartoons. But colleagues, this is about upholding good governance. It's not about any other thing. And I refuse to be drawn to discussing specific individual municipalities. I want to discuss the process insofar. And again, I'm dealing with institutions, I'm not dealing with individuals.
In fact, Treasury officials say they wrote to 99 municipalities and only 30 responded satisfactorily. The offenders include 4 of the country's biggest municipalities: Metros, Johannesburg, Nelson Mandela Bay, Buffalo City, and Mangaung. Defending their decision, they cited years of unaddressed, unauthorized, irregular, fruitless, and wasteful expenditure. In other words, perpetual financial mismanagement, repeat audit failures, non-compliance with Municipal Finance Management Act and other laws, and a lack of consequences for wrongdoers.
If we look into these issues, some of them had got nothing to do with the equitable share. It has got to do with simple non-compliance and incompetence. There's no reason that somebody can deduct money from the employees and not transfer and complain about the equitable share. Where does equitable share come into this picture? You've deducted money from the employees, and those are pension fund, you're supposed to transfer that to the pension fund, the equitable share does not come into the equation. You are required to reduce the unauthorized expenditure. It's already declared as unauthorized by the Auditor General. All you require is to go into a council meeting via impact and the council make a decision. Where does the equitable share fit into this picture? It's just people must get things done and then complain about unavailability of resources later. But they must do the simple things. All that we require here, if you look in all these letters, they're simple things. Where people may complain about equitable share, they may complain about non-payment and so on, then we can hear that. But non-payment is but one of the 3 issues we've raised. The other 3 issues have got nothing to do with non-payment. But I must make the point, equitable share changes affect all spheres of government. You can't change the one sphere without impacting on the other sphere, because the envelope is one.
The chairpersons of the parliamentary committees dealing with the issues raised tend to agree with the chairperson of Parliament's COCTA committee, pointing out that these are the same issues that were raised by the Auditor General only a couple of weeks ago.
A number of challenges. Firstly, the number of disclaimers where the Auditor General is unable to even express an opinion. The number was very high, and a number of them were repeat offenders. Then the number of those that had not submitted their financial statements on time was also quite high, and that was strange because for any transaction to happen, there has to be records, and when the AG wants to see them, then they can't produce them. Then the others were those where there were records of irregularities in procurement, irregularities in contract management, irregularities, suggestions of corruption, and all of which had not been properly investigated. And these, for us, were impacting on the service delivery. And therefore, we've been very concerned about the fact that there is a bit of complacency in terms of solving these problems on various municipalities.
I think this is a surefire sign of that the GNU is way more serious than ever before. We need to, in order to have a capable state, we need to install new discipline on all levels of government. I mean, it's well documented how poorly run the vast majority of municipalities are in our country. And I mean, that is absolutely the portion of government which affects people almost the most direct every day, because it's their water, it's their electricity, it's their roads. It is everything which they need to create success in their lives, but which is often not working. And I think, that's where we're excited about the work of the Government of National Unity.
While many welcomed Treasury's keenness to crack the whip, others asked what safeguards should be in place for poor communities, especially those at the mercy of councillors and officials who are repeat offenders and simply don't care about getting things right. And in an election year, could politicians lean on Treasury to back off? Only some of the questions I'd like to put to my guest, Songezo Zibi, the chairperson of Parliament's Standing Committee on Public Accounts, whose job is to oversee financial statements of all government departments and state institutions. Zibi, thank you very much for joining us. Really appreciate the minister today feeling the need to actually, he was away, he did explain that he was away when the officials had to face the media and actually talk about this decision that Treasury took, but he felt the need to reinforce that, because not only are they not going to back off, but they are now going for provincial and national government departments.
Yes, I'm glad. Good evening for you. And I'm glad the finance minister stepped in as well, because for those who have not been watching, we as the Standing Committee on Public Accounts have been dealing with municipalities since March 2025. The simple term here is that you have a rogues gallery of municipalities who don't care about the Municipal Finance Management Act, the prescripts in the Constitution that ask them that compel them to look after public finances properly, and municipalities that actually just do some of the wildest things that you can imagine, where they were to be at the Madlanga Commission, South Africans would be shocked. And members of the public and MPs continually ask about consequence management and whether there are any consequences at all. And I felt for a very long time that the Treasury is limp-wristed. The provincial cooperative governance and traditional affairs departments are limp-wristed, as well as the portfolio committees, and it's about time somebody took stern action.
Well, as far as some within the space are concerned, and I'm talking here about some councillors, but also the South African Local Government Association, they're saying you need to look at this problem a little more holistically than is the case at the moment. You need to look at a local government's share of what is available from the fiscus, but also the fact that households, businesses, government departments aren't paying these municipalities. I was told the other day that Johannesburg, the city of Johannesburg alone, is owed in the region of 60 billion rands.
So while it is true that we need to look at, and I've said this in Parliament in one of the budget votes myself, that we need to look at the formula in which the equitable transfer is calculated. But so that we're not talking in generalities, Vuyo, one of the municipalities that is on that list is a municipality called Masilonyana. They appeared before Parliament. They externalized all of the procurement to a private individual, all of it, to a private individual. They are owed what could be over nearly 200 million by mining companies in the area. They don't even know what formula to use to calculate how they're going to get that money. I can carry on. Now, the people who are mentioning the equitable share here must explain to South Africans how externalizing your procurement to a private individual has anything to do with the formula. These are people who simply don't care. Granted, that occurred under the previous municipal manager and I think the previous mayor. But that's a situation that has not yet been rectified in Macedonia. I was asking them in Parliament about why they're not collecting money from large companies. And this is what you get. In the city of Johannesburg, which is another, let's discard generalities as well. There are capital projects where the technical drawings are not all available. The suppliers nonetheless get paid even though the work has not been completed. What does that have to do with the formula for calculation? These are municipalities where both the officials and the political principals simply don't care to do the right thing. And their line has to be drawn somewhere. Otherwise, taxpayers are going to be taken for suckers.
What complicates things here as well, Mr. Zivi, I'm going to quote from an article that was written by Ndumiso Mukako in the Sowetan. And Ndumiso is, of course, the chairperson of the ANC's Economic Transformation Subcommittee in Mpumalanga, which I would dare say probably represents a lot of the views of ANC councillors in particular. He reckons that this suspension or the withholding of this money will in fact deepen the municipality's crisis more than it will actually deal with the underlying problems that have been raised. But I'm going to ask you to hold your thoughts right there. So back to that conversation we're having with the chairperson of Scopa, Songezo Zibi, on the decision, of course, of Treasury and the Finance Minister. The Minister today delivering some stern words, ending a week that sent shockwaves to many municipal officials and councillors after Treasury announced that it would withhold 13.5 billion rands of equitable share transfers to municipalities. Mr. Zibi, thanks very much for staying with us. Apologies, but as a journalist or former journalist yourself, you know that breaking news is breaking news. I was talking earlier before we had to take that crossing that Ndumiso Mukako, who chairs the ANC's committee in Mpumalanga, was saying that all this move by Treasury is doing or going to do or is doing is in fact, to use his words, cutting off the nose to spite the face, because you need to deal at the same time with the structural and institutional causes of the distress we're seeing in municipalities across the country.
And of course, there are structural problems in municipalities. One of which is the high unemployment rate in the country, and the fact that less and less, fewer and fewer people each year are able to afford to pay their municipal rates on time, and so on. So that's one of the structural problems that we've got to deal with. But that's not dealt with by allowing municipalities to do whatever they like with public funds. And personally, as chairperson of the committee, since we've started looking at municipalities, we really have seen a persistent pattern of waste, of over expenditure, of a refusal to adhere to Municipal Finance Management Act prescripts, and a lack of care even by councillors. For example, we would need to have the municipalities appearing before Parliament. If the municipal public accounts committees were doing their job, they simply don't, because there is no consequence for not doing their job. So we are forced to reach all the way down to deal with municipalities in Parliament. Of course, this is painful, but I can bet you can have me back next week. Some of those complaining municipalities will start receiving their money next week because they are going to be compliant. The only reason they have not been compliant is because nobody has insisted before that they become compliant so that they can get those funds.
And the fact that this is an election year, you don't think it may just also, someone could just easily lean on, Minister Godongwana, and then the Treasury officials may find themselves in a situation where they have to back off, because I can bet on this one. I mean, some councillors out there are going to go and say, well, we can't spend, we can't do anything because, this is what a Treasury has done, so our hands are tied. And what this means is that we're going to lose Party A or Party B or Party C will lose the election.
Well, I also think the finance minister has done exactly the same thing, which is to say, if you want to get elected in November, you need to start being compliant so that you can get the money. I mean, there are measures at municipal level to make sure that municipalities can look after indigents. None of these municipalities, for instance, get punished because they've provided water to indigent South Africans. They don't get punished for that. They don't get punished for spending money on more infrastructure in order to fix the water pipes and so on, which they hardly ever do. Even though some of that may be classified as unauthorized expenditure, it can be regularized within the Municipal Finance Management Act system by council, where those funds have been diverted for the right purpose. What we see is industrial scale irregularities in procurement for you. And it is those irregularities through which money is stolen from the public purse. The reason it has persisted for so long is that people don't get arrested. If you look at the Eastern Cape, for an example, and you wonder how many people have been arrested and tried, arrested by the Hawks and tried by the NPA, it's a minuscule number relative to the scale of the problem. The reason it has been a wild west at municipal level is because they know there will be no consequences. So if those people want to get re-elected, they need to start complying. They're going to get the money.
Songaza Zebi, let me thank you very much for your time. The chairperson of Scopa in Parliament, weighing in on the issues that have come about following that decision by Treasury to withhold 13.5 billion rands because these municipalities were not compliant and they were not prepared to correct their wrongs, because all of this happened after they were written to and they were asked or given an opportunity to actually tell Treasury why these monies should not be withheld. But as we've heard from the likes of the city of Johannesburg, the mayor of that city, Dada Morare, addressing a media briefing during the week saying they will indeed be compliant. So we're going to see how this one goes, especially after the finance minister said today that he is now gunning for provincial and national government departments that are just as guilty. We'll take a quick break. We'll bring you more stories after this short break. Well, President Cyril Ramaphosa this week spoke to journalists before deciding a couple of days later to extend the deadline for the Madlanga report. It will now have to be submitted by November 16 instead of the earlier date of August 31. Needless to say, the Commission was very pleased. After all, they wanted the extension.
The Commission has consistently said that it is under huge pressure. There is quite a bit that the Commission needs to get through in terms of witnesses, testimony. On our current deadline of 31 August, there's no doubt that it is highly pressurized, as has been indicated both by myself, with yourselves, members of the media, and you've heard that repeatedly here before the Commission in open testimony.
Of course, earlier we were talking about the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry, the decision by the President to extend the deadline for the Madlanga Commission. And those, of course, who have been closely following the proceedings weren't at all surprised by the President's decision. Take a listen to a conversation I had with our resident analyst who is with us regularly when we are covering the Commission.
We definitely expected this extension and it was granted. It is a circumspect extension for the Commission to finish its work. We hope that the Commission don't get added much more to its plate because it already has a full agenda. And what this allows the Commission to do, Vuyo, is to essentially finish the inquiry, provide those who have questions to answer it, and then finally to get those who ventilated the issue in the first place, like General Mkwanazi and Lieutenant General, that is, and General Khumalo and others, to then respond, to have a final word, and maybe even the Minister on special leave, Minister Mchunu. So we've also heard, starting today, a round of what they expect to be expert testimonies, and this would help the Commission to ground, to contextualize, and hopefully to start deepening their recommendations so that it can be much more targeted and hopefully much more effective and able to be implemented going forward. Thanks, Vuyo.
I suppose that's exactly what the President meant or had in mind when, in the statement that was issued today, he said, and I quote, is giving the is giving these new or allowing these new deadlines because open quotes so that the Commission can close off topics it has opened up in the course of hearings, close quotes.
Indeed, and a number of topics relates to its mandate, and that is the institutional frailties that allows for criminal infiltration, political interference, and corruption within the criminal justice system. Yes, we have yet to dive a little deeper into the criminal justice system, and we believe that's now starting with some of the IDAC responses and witness that we're now going to get. We also have one or two, at least one other municipality that we still have to get to, or the Commission still has to get to. And this would allow the Commission to do exactly that, because there is a difference between the end of July and the end of October, because it gives them that few extra months to provide a further scrutiny and further deepening of the evidence and to understand the vulnerability and the frailties, whether it's legislative, whether it relates to culture, whether it relates to policies and procedures, or whether it relates to the capability and the capacity of criminal actors who are determined to corrupt the state for their own ends. This will allow the Commission to be able to basically ring-fence their answer and come to some insightful conclusions. Vuyo.
Of course, the president, in his statement, also waxing lyrical about the manner in which law enforcement agencies are following up testimonies that have emerged from the commission. And we just witnessed one of those at the Germiston Magistrates Court, where, among others, Imogen Mashazi and Julius Mkwanazi appeared.
Absolutely, and we've got to remember that the commission is not really about sort of identifying the individual who maybe have they look to the individual to answer certain questions, but when you identify individuals for testimony and cross-examination, or at least for inquiry, that is because they serve as example of a broader and wider malaise within the particular institutions that's been looked at for you. So the individuals serve as an example. They then, if in their testimony implicate others or draw others into the net, yes, those people, and we've seen a number of suspensions, we've seen a number of folks being put forward for further investigation, and now we see a number of people on trial. Those are happy coincidences that flow from the work of the commission. It is not specifically the work of the commission, because as Judge Madlanga reminds us, it's not the commission mandate to say arrest the following people, nor to actually arrest them. Their work may lead to arrest. And we're now starting to see the fruits of the 100+ days of testimony and the dedicated investigations that we now believe, or we got to understand, as prosecutorial-led. That means setting up evidence, making sure the evidence can be tested in court, and then ultimately putting that evidence to an accused and then presenting them and the evidence to court.
But just to close us off, isn't there something to be said as well, Elred, about the fact that, notwithstanding the fact that you have no less than a dozen very senior police officers either being suspended or arrested, the system does still work, given the number of arrests and how fairly quickly, comparatively speaking, that these arrests have been effected.
Absolutely. And while we contend, at least people like myself, that we can't simply say that these people are bad apples and therefore bad actors, we're saying that it's an institutional rot. At the same time, we're saying that there's enough resilience and there's enough integrity within the system for those officers who now feel, I'm sure, Vuyo, a lot more bolstered and supported in their efforts to do the right thing, to do the right thing. And for them, we will be eternally grateful. And we hope that what comes from this commission and the work of the ad hoc committee and the work that will flow from the commission will continue to strengthen the hand and the workings of those officers who will want to do the right thing and want to succeed at their mandate of public safety and security for us all. Vuyo.
Welcome back. Well, let's squeeze in a story or two that are among those that we had prepared for you for this week's politics wrap, where we saw a combination this week of evidence placed before the Madlanga Commission, court rulings, and public protector reports that unsettled some politicians and their parties. EFF leader Julius Malema may be hauled before the Madlanga Commission to explain, among other things, his relationship with compromised crime intelligence deputy head Feroz Khan and Khan's associate, tobacco smuggler Mohammed Said. The commission heard this week that Khan used Said to communicate with Malema, even getting the EFF leader to ask parliamentary questions that pursued Khan's nefarious agenda. WhatsApp messages exchanged between Khan and Said also suggest that Malema may have conspired with the two to remove the then Inspector General of Intelligence, Sitlumamare Dintwe. In his affidavit to the commission, placed on record on Tuesday, Malema, of course, denied the allegations. Evidence leader Advocate Matthew Chaskelson also placed evidence before the commission showing that Khan passed police information to Syed, who then passed it on to Malema regarding the Red Beret leader's alleged involvement in the VBS saga. Take a listen to what the evidence leader had to say.
There is another serious concern about quid pro quo if we look back at the chronology. We've looked at a process that runs from 10 June, when the Operation Dudula messages are sent, through to 21 June, when the letter to the Minister of Police is sent. In the middle of that process, on the 15th of June, if we go to page 5990, we come to the Santon case number that I have mentioned previously. And there we see that it's now 4 days after General Khan has sent his draft question to the Inspector General, to Mr. Malema through Mr. Syed. Mr. Syed forwards to General Khan a request from Mr. Malema. And that is at the message on page 5990 at message time 1207 on the 15th of June, where Mr. Syed forwards the message, need to know the complaint in case number Santon case 79/07/2019, and says Juju Brew. And General Khan says, okay, thanks. Now, if we go to the next page, General Khan responds very promptly. What he's done is he's got onto the SAP's computerized database of cases, and he sends what looks like a photograph or a screenshot from that database, which identifies who the complainant is in that case. And we see that at the top of 5991. Now, and that screen that we see, which he sends to Mr. Syed, identifies the complainant as Mr. Ruplal. And Mr. Syed thanks him for it, and then for good measure, General Khan sends through not only Mr. Ruplal's name, which appears from the screen, but also his address, which wasn't even asked for.
Of course, another politician who may have some answers to provide to serious questions is the former public protector and now MK Party MP, and that's Advocate Busisiwe Mkhwebane. Impeached in 2023 following a parliamentary inquiry, she was found to have been incompetent and lacked an understanding of the law in some of the cases that she handled. This week, the Legal Practice Council launched an application in the Johannesburg High Court to strike her from the role of advocates, arguing that she is not fit and proper. I'm going to leave you with that soundbite. It's a goodbye from me for tonight.
The investigating committee looked at all of the evidence, which I must say was quite substantial. If you've seen the report from the parliamentary committee, it's many lever arch files full of documents. The committee looked at this and basically indicated that there's already a separate body who's made a finding on the facts of the matters, and therefore there's no need for the LPC to conduct its own further investigation to establish the facts of the matters. The facts have been established. Okay. And the committee then indicated that they recommend that we proceed to court for a strike-off application. In 2024, we had written extensively to Advocate Mkhwebane to request her to comment on this recommendation and to give any reasons why we should not proceed to court. Unfortunately, we did not receive response from her. And therefore, we are now proceeding to court with this matter.